If you've ever played Ace Attorney, you might remember a part in the fourth case where Gumshoe introduces you to a police dog with the very strange and memorable name Missile. What you might not know is that Ace Attorney creator Shu Takumi would go on to use that name for at least 2 other dogs, one of which was real. Sometime in the mid-2000s, Takumi would get this adorable little Pomeranian that he would go on to name Missile, possibly in reference to the dog from Ace Attorney. And judging by all the pictures that Takumi would share of Missile online, as well as some footage that's been floating around, it's pretty clear that the two of them were inseparable. Now, sadly, this Missile passed away in the summer of 2018, which Takumi revealed in this Twitter post that makes me very emotional every time I read it. You know, how he recounts how Missile waited for him to return from a business trip so he could see him one last time before he passed away. Just, ugh, what a good dog. Now, while it's very sad that the real Missile is no longer with us, in a sense his legacy lives on, because he very clearly served as Takumi's inspiration for what very well may be the greatest fictional dog that there's ever been. And I know that sounds ridiculous, sure, there have been dogs in fiction for thousands of years, and how could you possibly say that this is the best one? But if you've played Ghost Trick, you know. Now, there's a lot you can take away from a game like Ghost Trick. You know, it's endlessly creative, such an interesting gameplay system with such a great story, etc., etc. But there's one other thing that's always stood out every time I play it. To me, Ghost Trick is, above all else, an ode to man's best friend. Maybe the idea of pets in general, to be honest. But especially dogs. It's really hard to explain why that is without getting into very serious spoilers, so I'll just make like every other Ghost Trick fan on the internet and say, you should really play Ghost Trick. Seriously, go play it. You'll love it, trust me. But of course, the main reason has to do with this little Pomeranian character named Missile. I am certain that there is not a single person on Earth who is jaded enough to come out of playing Ghost Trick not absolutely loving this little guy. Which is really just a testament to the greatness of his writing, his design, and, of course, his theme music. Now, Missile's theme is pretty short and quaint, but I've always really liked it a lot, just because, to me, it feels 100% like the essence of not just the character, but of, you know, cute, yappy little dogs everywhere. Maybe the counterpart to that would be like Paul McCartney's Martha My Dear, you know, an ode to big, slow, fluffy dogs or something. While this tune may be short, there is just so much creativity packed into every bar of this little 30-second loop that makes it sound the way it does and sounds so perfect for this character and for dogs everywhere. So let's talk about it. I never get tired of this one. Now, if I know anything about Pomeranians, it's that they're these little bundles of energy, you know, always running around and, you know, looking happy and excited. And I feel like this tune just captures that spirit so brilliantly and in so many different ways. Like, for example, take the drum beat in the A section. Instead of using what you would consider like a standard rock backbeat where like the snare hits are on 2 and 4 and the kick would be on like 1 and 3 or something, Sugimori chooses to put the snare on every beat, so it has this very insistent rhythm that's demanding your attention, much like one of these little dogs would probably do. Really, the biggest contributor has got to be that bass line, right? Like, this bass line is very fast, it's very syncopated, like a lot of the notes are very short and staccato, and at least in the A section, the phrases tend to end on this A flat, which is the 5th of the tonic chord of D flat. We're in the key of D flat. And so by landing on the 5th like that, it feels just a little bit unresolved. Like, there's always this little bit of pent up energy in the bass line that it always wants to go somewhere, which, again, perfectly fitting for a Pomeranian. Speaking of syncopation, there's a couple other elements of this arrangement that smartly use syncopation to inject a little bit more energy into the tune that otherwise might not be there if you play things a little bit more on the beat. If you don't know what syncopation is, that basically just means when you have rhythms that don't begin or end on the beat. So a great example of this in Missile's theme is this kind of guitar part in the A section where you have D flat major, E flat minor, F minor, E flat minor, D flat major. But when Sugimori changes to this E flat minor chord, he plays it an 8th note early just to give the rhythm like a little kick. So here's what it would sound like if you played the chord strictly on the beat. And this is what it sounds like in the actual tune. Just has a lot more energy and life to it, doesn't it? Psst, hey. You guys want to hear something crazy? Believe it or not, the date in which I am recording this video is, in fact, my birthday. Now, I'm not going to ask for much for my birthday, just you sitting here watching this video is plenty for me. But there is one more thing you could do for me. I'm currently developing an adventure game called Detective Instinct Farewell My Beloved, which is inspired broadly by Shu Takumi's work, especially Ace Attorney and Ghost Trick, but also games like Hotel Dusk and Famicom Detective Club. It's a mystery story about a woman who goes missing on a train, and if any of those inspirations are things that you like, I think this might be the game for you. Coming to both Steam and Nintendo Switch later this year, and if you like what you see, we would greatly appreciate if you added it to your wishlist on Steam. Every single one helps us a ton. The link is in the description. And besides, it's my birthday, it's the least you could do, right? Thank you so much, guys. Let's get back to Missile's theme. So probably most often when we do this kind of music theory analysis, we look at what chords a tune has and then try to explain what kinds of emotional characteristics those chords usually evoke. So for instance, I've often talked about the flat 6, flat 7 to 1 resolution, which sounds like this. And that chord progression is often used to evoke like a sense of adventure or heroism. I mean, you can hear it, right? Like, so, you know, you'll hear that in a lot of like Zelda music and things like that. But the important thing to remember is that chords don't exist in a vacuum. There are so many other aspects to a tune's arrangement that contribute to its emotional feel, and chords just don't tell the whole story. To the point that a chord progression that sounds very heroic and adventurous in one context might sound totally different in another, or at least a little bit more nuanced. So in Missile's theme, we are getting those same chords, right? You have the 1 chord, flat 7, flat 6, flat 7, 1. So if this tune were arranged with like a full orchestra, right, like it had trumpets, a whole brass section, maybe some strings, then yeah, maybe this would sound very heroic and adventurous, but what instruments does this tune use? Well, on the melody you have 2 different instruments doubling each other. One is just this very soft sine wave, and then the other is this instrument that I can't quite place. I mean, I actually did a cover of Missile's theme a really long time ago, and I sort of approximated the sound of that instrument with my friend playing the steel drum, so it's something like that. Then on the rhythm you have this very soft acoustic guitar and a sort of gentle Hammond organ type sound. Then the bass is on this very common and sort of corny synth sound, you know, corny in a good way. Then just this very airy drum kit and some hand claps. So altogether, I would consider this combination of timbres very soft and unintimidating, you know, maybe even cute. So what do you get then when you take this very cute instrumentation and merge it with a chord progression that is often used in heroic or adventurous contexts? Well, to me, it still has that aspect of like cool determination, but in maybe a little bit of a patronizing way. Yay! Look at him go! He's trying so hard, he's such a good boy. Actually, another game that used a similar effect to this recently might be the Link's Awakening remake on Switch, which took the original game's very heroic-sounding Game Boy score and arranged it with these sort of small chamber groups and maybe some toy-like instrumentation to evoke that game's kind of cutesy visuals while still retaining some element of that Zelda adventure. But in this context, it's just another way that this tune evokes the personality of a cute little Pomeranian. And it's especially appropriate for a character like Missile, who's just the most single-minded and determined character you'll ever meet in a video game. And to be clear, even though I'm saying the instrumentation of this tune maybe gives you that sort of, "aw, he's so cute" kind of impression, make no mistake, Missile is a hero. And the feeling you get from this tune might be very different the first time you hear it compared to by the time you get to the end of the game. Just don't underestimate my boy, that's all I'm saying. And also, just because I have nowhere else to talk about this, I really love the last chord of the B section. So the typical chord you might use in that scenario would be like an A flat chord or an A flat 7 chord, which then leads very nicely back to the 1 chord of D flat. But that's not what we get here. Instead, we get something that's sort of like a A flat sus with a 9th on it. So this is what it might sound like if you just replace that chord with a typical A flat 7. And this is what it actually sounds like in the song. I don't have anything particularly interesting to say about this, I just think it sounds neat. So, in conclusion, just go play Ghost Trick, man. I mean, there's so many things I could say about this tune and Missile as a character in particular, but I really don't want to do you a disservice by spoiling anything that happens in this story, because believe me, if you haven't played this game, you really want to go in blind here. The final moments of Ghost Trick's story absolutely hit like a truck, and while I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, maybe it'll be a story for another day. But what are your favorite tunes from Ghost Trick's soundtrack? Are there any you'd like me to take a look at? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to check out Detective Instinct Farewell My Beloved on Steam. The link is in the description. Thanks a lot, guys. Now I'm gonna go have some birthday cake. that's enough of that.